As the months passed, the once vibrant community descended into a state of disarray. The HOA, stripped of its authority and credibility, struggled to maintain even the most basic standards of upkeep. Weeds choked the once manicured lawns, and the community pool, once the centerpiece of neighborhood gatherings, lay abandoned and neglected. The once pristine streets were dotted with potholes and discarded trash, a stark contrast to the well-kept image the HOA had once so proudly upheld. Meanwhile, Sarah's shade rental business continued to thrive, drawing in a steady stream of customers seeking respite from the oppressive summer heat. Her remaining oak trees, lovingly tended and pruned, provided a lush, verdant oasis amidst the sea of neglect that had engulfed the rest of the community. The once powerful HOA committee, humiliated and demoralized, had all but given up. Mrs. Bentley, her carefully curated image of perfection shattered, had retreated from the public eye, while Mr. Peterson could often be found muttering curses under his breath as he surveyed the deteriorating state of his own property. As for Mr. Donaldson, the HOA's attorney, he had resigned in disgrace, his reputation forever tarnished by his association with the committee's underhanded tactics. Sarah, meanwhile, reveled in her triumph, her pockets lined with the proceeds of her lucrative shade rental business. She had proven that even the mightiest institutions could be brought down by the determination and resourcefulness of a single individual. One hot summer afternoon, as Sarah sat on her porch, sipping a refreshing glass of lemonade, she couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of her former adversaries. The once pristine community had become a testament to their failure, a cautionary tale of the dangers of hubris and the power of perseverance. "I told you so," she murmured, a wry smile playing on her lips. Never underestimate the power of a woman with a plan. With that, she leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the lush, shaded canopy of her beloved oak trees. The HOA had been vanquished, and she had emerged victorious, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The following day, Sarah set up a small folding table at the edge of her property, a hand-painted sign propped up in front. SHADU for SAL, Lee, $50/HOA. Within an hour, a long line of desperate parents had formed, each clutching crumpled bills and pleading for a chance to escape the scorching sun. Sarah calmly collected their money, then ushered them one by one under the cooling canopy of her remaining oak trees. "Ah, blessed relief!" Mrs. Bentley exclaimed, sinking into a lawn chair with a contented sigh. Sarah watched with delight as the HOA committee members, one by one, joined the throng of sweltering neighbors seeking refuge from the relentless heat. She made a mental note of each name, carefully tallying their payments. As the afternoon wore on, the line only grew longer. Parents bickered and children whined, but Sarah maintained her cool composure, efficiently managing the impromptu shade rental operation. "This is highway robbery," Mr. Peterson fumed, handing over a crumpled $50 bill. "You can't just do this." "Oh, I can," Sarah replied, flashing him a wicked grin. "The HOA said I had to remove half my trees. They didn't specify how or when." Mr. Peterson opened his mouth to protest, but the words died on his lips as his son tugged impatiently on his sleeve, begging to escape the punishing sun. Defeated, he trudged away, muttering curses under his breath. Sarah chuckled to herself, counting her rapidly growing stack of cash. The HOA had made a grave mistake in underestimating her. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah had earned over $1,200, more than enough to cover the cost of the trees she'd been forced to remove. As the last stragglers departed, she gathered up her earnings and headed inside, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "That'll teach them to mess with my trees," she whispered, slipping the money into a hidden safe. The next morning, the HOA committee convened an emergency meeting, their faces etched with fury and desperation. "We have to put a stop to this," Mrs. Bentley declared, pounding her fist on the table. "This is completely unacceptable." But as they debated their options, Sarah sipped her morning coffee, already planning her next move. The following weekend, Sarah's shade rental business was in full swing. Families flocked to her property, eager to escape the scorching sun and cool off under the canopy of her remaining oak trees. She had erected a makeshift awning, complete with a small beverage stand, and the line of customers stretched down the block. "This is ridiculous," Mr. Peterson fumed, watching helplessly as his neighbors happily forked over their cash. "We have to put a stop to this immediately." The HOA committee convened another emergency meeting, their faces flushed with frustration. "We need to find a way to shut down this operation," Mrs. Bentley said, her eyes narrowed in determination. "It's making a mockery of our entire community." The committee members debated various options, from issuing a cease and desist order to threatening legal action. But Sarah had anticipated their every move, carefully researching local bylaws and building a formidable defense. "I'm telling you, we can't touch her," Mr. Donaldson, the HOA's attorney, lamented. "As long as she's following the tree removal guidelines we set, there's nothing we can do to stop her from renting out the shade." Mrs. Bentley slammed her fist on the table, her perfectly coiffed hair now slightly disheveled. "This is unacceptable. We can't have this woman running a private business on our property." "Actually, it's not your property," Sarah interjected, stepping into the room with a confident smile. "The land where I'm operating my business is mine, free and clear. I've double-checked the deeds and property lines." The committee members stared at her in stunned silence, their jaws dropping open. "How did you?" Mrs. Bentley sputtered, her face flushing with embarrassment. "I've done my homework," Sarah replied, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "And I can assure you, I'm well within my rights to continue this business venture." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a stack of neatly organized documents, handing them to the dumbfounded committee members. "These are copies of the deed, the property survey, and a detailed list of the local bylaws I've consulted," she explained. "I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have." The committee members exchanged bewildered glances, their initial outrage slowly giving way to a sense of defeat. Sarah had outmaneuvered them at every turn, and they had no choice but to accept defeat. As the meeting adjourned, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had stood her ground and won, and now the HOA was at her mercy. She couldn't wait to see what the future held. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's shade rental business continued to thrive, much to the dismay of the HOA committee. Families flocked to her property, eager to escape the scorching sun and enjoy the refreshing respite of her oak trees. "This is completely unacceptable," Mrs. Bentley fumed, watching helplessly as Sarah collected payment from a steady stream of customers. "We have to find a way to shut this down." The committee members, their previous attempts at legal action thwarted by Sarah's meticulous research, were at a loss. They huddled in the community center, their faces etched with frustration and desperation. "We can't just let her get away with this," Mr. Peterson exclaimed, pounding his fist on the table. "She's making a mockery of our entire community." Suddenly, Mrs. Bentley's face lit up with a devious grin. "I've got it," she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "We'll hit her where it hurts the most, her wallet." The committee members leaned in, their curiosity piqued. Mrs. Bentley outlined her plan, her voice dripping with malice. "We'll increase the property taxes on her land," she explained, a wicked smile spreading across her face. "If she can't afford the higher taxes, she'll be forced to shut down her little business venture." The other committee members nodded in agreement, their own faces darkening with a sense of vindictive satisfaction. "That's brilliant," Mr. Donaldson, the HOA's attorney, chimed in. "We'll draft the paperwork and have it processed by the end of the week." With their plan in motion, the committee members dispersed, their steps lighter and their moods considerably brighter. Sarah, unaware of the impending storm, continued to bask in the success of her shade rental business, her pockets growing ever fuller with each passing day. As the tax bill arrived in her mailbox, however, Sarah's world came crashing down. The new property tax assessment was nearly double the previous amount, a clear attempt by the HOA to cripple her operation. "This is outrageous," she fumed, her hands trembling with rage. "They're trying to bankrupt me." Determined to fight back, Sarah pored over the tax documents, searching for any loopholes or discrepancies. But the HOA had covered their tracks meticulously, leaving her with few options. As the deadline for the tax payment approached, Sarah faced a gut-wrenching decision: continue her shade rental business and risk losing her home, or shut it down and concede defeat to the HOA. The deadline for the new property tax payment loomed, and Sarah was running out of options. The HOA's calculated move to hike her taxes had hit her where it hurt the most: her wallet. Sitting at her kitchen table, she pored over the stack of documents, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. There had to be a way out of this. She couldn't let the HOA win, not after everything she had fought for. As the sun began to set, Sarah made a decision. She would not give in without a fight. Grabbing her car keys, she set off for the county assessor's office, determined to uncover any discrepancies in the tax increase. The clerk behind the counter eyed her warily as she slammed the paperwork down on the desk. "There has to be a mistake here," Sarah said, her voice trembling with urgency. "This tax hike is outrageous and completely unjustified." The clerk, a seasoned bureaucrat, simply shrugged. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the numbers are accurate. The HOA has the authority to adjust property taxes within their jurisdiction." Sarah's heart sank. "But that's not fair. They're trying to put me out of business." The clerk's expression remained impassive. "I understand your frustration, but there's nothing I can do. The tax bill is due in 2 weeks." Defeated, Sarah trudged back to her car, her mind racing with desperate thoughts. She couldn't let the HOA win, not like this. There had to be a way to fight back, to show them that she wouldn't be bullied. As she drove home, an idea began to take shape in her mind. If the HOA wanted to play dirty, she would give them a taste of their own medicine. The next day, Sarah was back at the county assessor's office, this time with a plan. She spent hours combing through property records, meticulously documenting every discrepancy she could find. Armed with her newfound knowledge, she set out to expose the HOA's tactics. One by one, she confronted her neighbors, urging them to investigate their own tax assessments. To her surprise, many of them had also been hit with unexpected hikes, all of which seemed to align with the HOA's agenda. Word of Sarah's crusade quickly spread, and soon, a group of angry homeowners had banded together, determined to fight back against the HOA's tactics. As the deadline for the tax payment approached, the county assessor's office was flooded with complaints and appeals. The HOA's carefully crafted plan was unraveling, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. "You mess with me, I'll mess with you," she muttered, a sly grin spreading across her face. As the deadline for the tax payment approached, the HOA committee members found themselves in a state of growing panic. What had started as a calculated attempt to shut down Sarah's shade rental business had quickly spiraled out of control. "This is a disaster," Mrs. Bentley cried, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the polished surface of the conference table. "We're being flooded with appeals from the entire neighborhood." Mr. Donaldson, the HOA's attorney, cleared his throat nervously. "It appears that Sarah has uncovered some discrepancies in the tax assessments. Many of the homeowners are claiming their taxes were unfairly increased." Mr. Peterson slammed his fist on the table, his face flushed with anger. "This is all her fault. She's turned the entire community against us." The committee members exchanged troubled glances, the weight of their predicament pressing heavily upon them. They had underestimated Sarah's determination and resourcefulness, and now they were facing the consequences. "We have to do something," Mrs. Bentley said, her voice laced with desperation. "We can't let her win." The committee deliberated for hours, exploring every possible avenue to regain control of the situation. But Sarah had outmaneuvered them at every turn, and their options were dwindling. As the final deadline for the tax payments approached, the HOA committee convened one last meeting, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resignation. "We have no choice," Mr. Donaldson announced, his voice somber. "We have to rescind the tax increases and admit defeat." The committee members sat in stunned silence, the gravity of their failure weighing heavily upon them. Mrs. Bentley dabbed at the corners of her eyes with a delicate handkerchief, while Mr. Peterson stared straight ahead, his jaw set in a hard line. "This is unacceptable," he growled. "We can't just let her get away with this." But the decision had been made, and there was no turning back. The HOA had been outwitted and outmaneuvered, and Sarah had emerged victorious. As the news spread through the neighborhood, a collective cheer went up. Sarah had proven that even the most powerful and well-connected institutions could be brought down by the determination and resourcefulness of a single individual. With her shade rental business thriving and her property taxes restored to their previous levels, Sarah leaned back in her rocking chair, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. She had won, and the HOA had learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the power of a woman with a plan. In the aftermath of their humiliating defeat, the HOA committee members found themselves the subject of intense scrutiny and criticism from the entire neighborhood. Sarah's relentless campaign to expose their underhanded tactics had left them with little choice but to publicly admit their wrongdoing. "This is an outrage." Mrs. Bentley fumed, her perfectly coiffed hair now slightly disheveled. "How dare they turn against us like this?" Mr. Peterson, his face flushed with embarrassment, paced back and forth in the HOA's conference room. "We should have known better than to mess with Sarah. She's made a fool of us all." The once powerful HOA committee now found themselves on the defensive, their authority and credibility called into question by the very community they had sworn to serve. "This is unacceptable," Mr. Donaldson, the HOA's attorney, declared. "We need to take immediate action to regain control of the situation." But as the committee members debated their options, Sarah continued to bask in the glow of her victory. Her shade rental business was thriving, and the once scorching community pool was now a lush, shaded oasis, all thanks to the trees she had fought so hard to keep. "I told you so," she would often say to her neighbors, her eyes gleaming with a mixture of triumph and mischief. The HOA's attempts to retaliate against Sarah were met with fierce opposition from the community. Homeowners who had once blindly followed the committee's orders now openly defied them, refusing to comply with their demands. "This is our neighborhood, not yours," one resident declared, his voice trembling with righteous indignation. "We won't let you bully us anymore." Faced with the overwhelming backlash, the HOA committee found themselves in an unenviable position. Their once unquestioned authority had been shattered, and they were now scrambling to regain the trust and respect of the very people they had sworn to serve. As the weeks passed, the once pristine community began to show signs of neglect. Overgrown lawns, unkempt gardens, and abandoned vehicles became a common sight, as the HOA struggled to maintain its grip on the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to thrive, her shade rental business expanding to meet the ever-increasing demand from her grateful neighbors. She had proven that even the mightiest institutions could be toppled by the determination and resilience of a single individual. As the sun began to set on the once picturesque community, Sarah leaned back in her rocking chair, a sense of profound satisfaction washing over her. She had won, and the HOA had learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate the power of a woman with a plan. As the months passed, the once vibrant community descended into a state of disarray. The HOA, stripped of its authority and credibility, struggled to maintain even the most basic standards of upkeep. Weeds choked the once manicured lawns, and the community pool, once the centerpiece of neighborhood gatherings, lay abandoned and neglected. The once pristine streets were dotted with potholes and discarded trash, a stark contrast to the well-kept image the HOA had once so proudly upheld. Meanwhile, Sarah's shade rental business continued to thrive, drawing in a steady stream of customers seeking respite from the oppressive summer heat. Her remaining oak trees, lovingly tended and pruned, provided a lush, verdant oasis amidst the sea of neglect that had engulfed the rest of the community. The once powerful HOA committee, humiliated and demoralized, had all but given up. Mrs. Bentley, her carefully curated image of perfection shattered, had retreated from the public eye, while Mr. Peterson could often be found muttering curses under his breath as he surveyed the deteriorating state of his own property. As for Mr. Donaldson, the HOA's attorney, he had resigned in disgrace, his reputation forever tarnished by his association with the committee's underhanded tactics. Sarah, meanwhile, reveled in her triumph, her pockets lined with the proceeds of her lucrative shade rental business. She had proven that even the mightiest institutions could be brought down by the determination and resourcefulness of a single individual. One hot summer afternoon, as Sarah sat on her porch, sipping a refreshing glass of lemonade, she couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of her former adversaries. The once pristine community had become a testament to their failure, a cautionary tale of the dangers of hubris and the power of perseverance. "I told you so," she murmured, a wry smile playing on her lips. Never underestimate the power of a woman with a plan. With that, she leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the lush, shaded canopy of her beloved oak trees. The HOA had been vanquished, and she had emerged victorious, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit.